Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna share this presentation, very short presentation, and then I will hand it over to Pete to continue. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the fifth monthly webinar, CDR webinar, hosted by the UPTAKE project. As you may know, we are hosting these webinars every second Wednesday of the month at 2 p.m. Central European time. To participate in these webinars, you need to register. So please follow the link for registration and you will receive an email with the link to participate in the Zoom call. The webinars are organized by the Industrial and Planetary Carbon Cycle Program at CMCC as part of the UPTAKE project. And we are happy to have papers published within the UPTAKE project featuring this webinar. So every month we are featuring one of the papers which come out of the project. A little background about the CMCC Foundation. So CMCC is a leading research center focusing on understanding and interaction between climate change and society. It's the biggest research center on climate change in Italy. We have offices all across the country, as you can see on the map. And we are about 450 to 500 researchers and staff which are organized in three main research institutes. We are I'm based in Milan, which is one of the divisions under EIEE Institute. I'm also directing one of the cross-cutting programs. As you can see, we have so far 3 cross-cutting programs across different divisions in CMCC. The one is devoted to carbon cycle that I'm directing, and the other 2 are about predicting socioeconomic impacts and then global cause. I want to say a few words also about one other initiative that we have, and you may be interested in participating. We are also hosting the first summer school on CDR this year. We are very excited about that, and the applications are now open until basically next week, April 13. So you have a few days to apply. If you are a PhD student or postdoc, this is a great opportunity for young researchers to learn more about CDR. And we have very good lineup of instructors, some of them from the UPTAKE project and other sister projects also. So we are very excited about this 2-week opportunity for young researchers to join us and benefit from this summer school. You can scan this QR code on the right side and or visit the website and apply, learn more information and apply for the school. Another information I wanted to share with you is about UPTAKE platform. We have developed this UPTAKE stakeholder forum, which is an online platform. We are bringing together not only UPTAKE members, but also stakeholders outside UPTAKE. So which include businesses, policymakers, civil society, and other researchers in the field. By joining this stakeholder forum, you will be able to access to the latest developments coming out of our project and also other research activities and news regarding CDR. We have a regular weekly update on latest publications in the domain of CDR and going a bit deeper into one of the publications every week. We also have started recently working on the business side. So we are trying to get more CDR businesses participating in our platform. So hopefully you will see more activities also there. So please join us. This is by scanning this QR code, you will have access to a very simple registration form, and then we will allow you to access to the features on the platform. Today's webinar is about sustainable bioenergy crops and beneficial land use change under changing climate. The speakers are Mohamed Abdalla from University of Aberdeen and Göran Berndes from Chalmers University. We have a panelist, Floor from Utrecht University, and the moderator is Pete Smith. So just to remind you, if you need to post a question, please use the Q&A section under your Zoom application. And we will try to answer the questions either directly there in the Q&A section, or the panelist and moderator will bring it to the panel for discussion. For the next month, on May 14th, please mark your calendar. We will have another good talk by Dr. Jen Roberts from University of Strathclyde. And she's going to talk about national climate strategies and the inequalities in global development. So having said that, I leave the floor to Pete to start the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rahel. And I can see that we've got 111 people, participants in this webinar already, so that's a great turnout. Thanks for coming. And you've already heard the introduction to our speakers today. So I'm going to turn it over to Mohamed, and then we're going to hear from Göran. And 15 minutes each, please, Mohamed and Göran, to leave plenty of time to discuss afterwards with Floor. Over to you, Mohamed.
Thank you, Pete. Let me share my slides. Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. So today I'm going to present this study which is assessing the sustainability of Miscanthus and Willow as global bioenergy crops under current and future climate condition, part 1. So Miscanthus and Willow are getting increasing attention, not only because of their renewable energy potential, but also because of their role in carbon dioxide removal from the atmosphere. And in this talk, I will explore their potential productivity under the present and future climate conditions, and highlight some of their sustainability factors and challenges. So this paper is already published in Agronomy, and we call it part 1 because there will be part 2, which will cover the impact of transporting the biomass. If you transport biomass, for example, for a 500 kilometer, how that will affect the energy use efficiency and the carbon intensity. So Miscanthus giganteus is a perennial carbon-form grass, produces up to 30 tons per hectare annually with minimal input. It doesn't require much fertilizer or water, making it highly efficient for energy production. It thrives on marginal lands, unsuitable for food crops, showing resilience to pests and diseases and water scarcity while improving soil health because it adds carbon to the soil. So the high photosynthetic efficiency and carbon sequestration capacity support greenhouse gas reduction and sustainable energy efforts. On the other hand, we have Willow, which is a short rotation woody crop, regenerates through copsing and produces up to 15 tons per hectare annually, ensuring reliable bioenergy production. It is deep roots, improve soil structure, prevent erosion, and enhance nutrient cycling, supporting grassland sustainability. Willow also complements existing agricultural practices by providing additional biomass for energy production without compromising grazing or conservation land uses. So the study evaluates the productivity and environmental sustainability of these bioenergy crops under both the current and the future climate scenarios. It focuses on biomass productivity, carbon intensity, and energy use efficiency. Just like what I said, the second part of the study will be concentrating on the effect of transport on the carbon intensity and the energy use efficiency. So the aims is to inform policymakers, farmers, researchers, contributing to the development of sustainable energy solution and supporting broader efforts in climate change mitigation. So we use the Miscanthus, which is a dynamic process-based model designed to simulate the growth, development, and yield of Miscanthus crop. And we also use the Salix-4, which is a further development of Miscanthus to be able to use it for the Willow short rotation copies. The soil data we use, we got it from the International Geosphere Biosphere Program data and information system, and we use Korean 2000, and we use climate data from the Hadley Climate Model 3, provided by the Climate Research Unit at the University of East Anglia, and we use a baseline climate from 1961 to 1990 and two future climate scenarios up to 2060, one A1 F1, which is a fossil fuel intensive, and B1, which is the moderate climate scenario. So the model gave us the dry matter in ton per hectare. It also calculates the carbon emission intensity, which is the total greenhouse gas emission with the production and processing of Miscanthus or Willow, expressed as carbon dioxide carbon equivalence. So this is including all the greenhouse gas emission, if it is carbon dioxide or nitrous oxide or methane. And the model also calculates the energy use efficiency, which is the measure of how efficiently energy is utilized during the production and processing of Miscanthus or Willow. It is also calculated as the inverse of the energy input to energy output ratio. So here we have the dry matter for the Miscanthus. On the left hand, we have the baseline, and on the right hand, we have the B1 scenario. So if we look to the areas of production of Miscanthus, we can see that it's concentrated in tropic and subtropic. That is mainly because the climate is suitable for the productivity of the crop. But there is no productivity in the arid or high latitude areas. And this productivity under B1 scenario is going to extend and expand to the north. It's going to shift to the north. If we look to the Canada and Europe, you can see that there is a shift to the north, to the cold area, mainly because the climate is becoming more suitable. There will be some negative, a small negative effect on the area which is now suitable for the production of the crop, but that is very small because this is a moderate climate scenario. For the A1, F1, the extension north will be more, so they will be covering more area in the north because the climate is becoming more suitable, but there will be more effect, also negative effect on the area which is now suitable for the crop. Maybe we can't see it here in the map, but if we look to the number, to the values, we can see that there is some differences. If you go to the Willow, we can see also Willow also concentrated mainly in the tropic and subtropic. This is at baseline. But there is also no productivity in the high latitude areas or in the arid areas. But Willow is more adapted to the cold areas than the Miscanthus. You can see that it's still spread here in the north. And under B1, they will be more spread, more shift to the north compared to the baseline. And there will also be some small negative effect on the areas and the productivity in the areas which is now suitable for the production of the crop, mainly because the climate is becoming too warm, a bit too warm. That will be more clear under A1, F1. There will be more shift in the north, but also there will be more negative effect on the area which is now suitable for the crop, mainly because of the climate becoming climate stress, or climate becoming too warm for the production of the crop. We can also see the regional differences here in this baseline data. We can see the red one here is for Miscanthus and the blue one is for Willow. We can see most of the Miscanthus productivity from North America, South America, Oceania, and for the Willow, mostly from North America, South America, and Oceania. For Europe, we can see that the productivity is low comparing with other regions. Moving to the carbon intensity, we can see that the carbon intensity more concentrated in the industrial areas in the north at baseline, mainly in the north for the industrial areas, and that will extend and that's becoming more intense for the B1 scenario, in the north, especially in the north, because of the agricultural intensity. Will be more agricultural intensity, and that will be more clear when you go to A1, F1. There will be more spread for the or more higher carbon intensity in the north. So we can say that A1, F1 scenario increasing the productivity, yes, the productivity, but at the same time it is also increase. It has some challenges like increasing carbon intensity. It can increase more carbon intensity. Also, there will be more energy demand and also climate stress. So moving to the Willow carbon intensity, we can see that at baseline, it's also in the industrial areas, mainly because of the intensity, agricultural intensity. That also will increase in the north. Under B1 scenario will be more in the north because the area itself is becoming bigger, the cultivation area becoming bigger, and also because the agricultural intensity. And that will be more clear also for the A1, F1 will be more intensity for the carbon, especially in the north, especially in the north, but they will also be for other regions. So we can see the regional differences here in this graph. We can see most of the highest carbon intensity is coming from Europe for Miscanthus and for Willow, comparing to the other regions. For the energy use efficiency, we can see that at baseline, the Miscanthus concentration in the tropic and subtropics, and that is mainly because this is the optimal climate for the production of the crop. So this is the optimal climate, and that will increase also when you have under B1, when you have more area which is suitable for the crop, then you will have more energy efficiency in the north. And that's becoming more clear when you come to the A1, F1. But at the same time, the areas which are not suitable for the crop will negatively affect. That is clear in the values. When we check the values, you can see that there is some effect on that. So for Willow also, we have the same story for Willow because we have the productivity is in the tropic and subtropic because of the climate. Climate is optimal, environmental issues is also optimal, but that will also increase further when you have B1 scenario. You have more in the north, and it will become more clear under the A1, F1, especially in the north. But there will also be some negative effect on the energy use efficiency in the tropic and subtropic, which are now suitable for the production of the crop. We can see also the regional differences here in this graph. So for Miscanthus, we can see that energy use efficiency is higher in North America, South America, Oceania. And for the Willow, we can see that also in America and maybe Oceania. So here we calculated the effect of climate for the both crop, Miscanthus and Willow, the effect on dry matter, carbon intensity, energy use efficiency. We can see that for Miscanthus, dry matter is going, this is global, overall averages will be reduced by 15% for A1, F1, by 8% for B1, and carbon intensity will increase by 118 for A1, F1, and by 113 for B1 scenario, and the energy use efficiency will be reduced by 10% for A1, F1, and by 7% for B1 scenario. For Willow, the dry matter will be decreased by 12% for A1, F1, and 7% for B1 scenario, and the carbon intensity will be increased by 64% for the A1, F1 scenario, and by 57% for the B1 scenario, and the energy use efficiency will be reduced by 9% for A1, F1 scenario, and 6% for the B1 scenario. So by this way, we come to the conclusion that Miscanthus and Willow are highly productive in the tropical and subtropical region, but decline in arid and high latitude and mountainous area. And Miscanthus generally outperform Willow, but Willow adapt better to in the temperate climate. And the A1 F1 scenario increases productivity in the north, region with some challenges, just like what I said. There will be more energy demand. There will also be carbon intensity, high carbon intensity, while B1 ensure steady growth in suitable climates. A1F1 scenario increases carbon intensity in the north area, while B1 offer moderate growth with emission reduction efforts. So this study underscores that the need for a regional specific strategies to optimize the sustainability of bioenergy crop under changing climate conditions. Because the crop performing is regional, and also the carbon benefit is also regional. So we need a regional specific strategies to optimize the sustainability of these bioenergy crops. Also, expanding bioenergy require research on socioeconomic impacts to ensure fair, effective carbon removal. That is because expanding this project will have some social impacts, have also some economic impact, and some legal impacts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. So please save your questions until the end when we've heard from Göran. Göran, could you share your slides, please? And please stick to 15 minutes. Thank you for sticking to 15 minutes, Mohamed. You're muted, Göran.
Sorry, Pete. Do you see my slides now?
Perfect. Yes, full screen.
Okay. So thanks for this opportunity to show some complementary slides to what we just saw from Mohamed. It was very interesting. And I have a long title for a short presentation here. So I will talk about something we refer to as beneficial land use change, and then specifically how expansion of biomass plantations in Europe can contribute to reducing some of the impacts we have from current land use practices. Let's see if I can move forward. Yes, and I want to stress also that I different to Mohamed, I will not bring any recently published results here now, but it's actually quite ancient knowledge. But at the same time, I have found it's increasingly difficult to communicate on these type of issues, partly due to more and more narratives expressing doubt about bio-based solutions, and therefore also expressing doubts about the related land use and biomass production. So I thought it could be a useful complement to what we just saw presented by Mohamed here. So as a concept, even if it hasn't been spelled out in this way, I think beneficial land use change in relation to establishing biomass production systems, that has been around for quite long. And just as an example, I selected here an aerial view of a river in Madagascar, which is an example of how land use change, in this case deforestation for the purpose of cultivating annual crops mostly, has caused quite extensive soil erosion and then leads to the sediment transport and depositing in the delta that grows, as you see here. And soil erosion is really one of the primary causes to land degradation. And this challenge of addressing land degradation and also restoring degraded land has for many decades been connected to the possibility of making an income from cultivating different types of crops, often perennial crops, as an alternative to annual crops on erodible soils, on sloping hills, and so on. So this is something that has been around for quite a while. I will, in this presentation, instead focus on European agriculture, which is maybe a less common theme when we talk about these ways of cultivating biomass crops as a way to reducing soil degradation and other impacts. So I will show some numbers and maps and drawing on quite some publications now, and I want to credit a lot of co-authors and colleagues that have contributed not only to these papers but also others. And what I wanted to show here is an approach where we have started out from the challenges that some of the challenges we have for agriculture in EU. So we have tried to understand and translate different types of impacts into a GIS database, where we then have found a way to connect that to benefit of expanding alternative cropping systems. So what we are focused on in these first papers here, you can see here it's soil carbon loss as a consequence of land use, nitrogen emissions to water, causing eutrophication of aquatic ecosystems, recurring flooding and impacts caused by that, and then water and wind erosion. And as usual in these types of maps, the more red it is, the worse it is. And if it is green, it's not so alarming. What we did then was to try to understand where would the benefit of shifting to perennials be highest. And we then was overlaying the impact map with a map showing the degree of dominance of annual crops, based on expecting that where you have dominance of annual crops and also severe impacts, that's where you have the largest benefits of introducing perennials as an alternative land use. And then as a indicative for EU as a whole, EU and UK, I should say, this was a few years ago. We found that depending on how we select the criteria here, between 10 and almost half of the land used for annual crop production in EU plus UK is located in landscapes where you could see that these would be a priority for introducing perennial cropping as a way to reduce the impacts. So we did this for all the different impacts, not only for soil carbon loss. So it's a quite extensive area that would benefit from shifting to perennial crops. Now you can do that in many different ways, and we have explored some of these ways in the papers. I wanted to focus on one example here to keep my time, Pete. And that is the option of introducing grass in crop rotations, and in that way reduce some of the impacts of really focusing on annual cropping systems. So what we did then was to model the effects of making adjustments in crop rotations that are prevalent in different areas to introduce a number of years of grass clover cultivation instead of annual crops. And that is what you see exemplified here with the 6-year crop rotation. And we have then replaced in year 2 and 3, in this case, we have replaced oats and winter wheat with grass clover cropping systems. And I mean, one strong motivation for doing this, which is from the farmer perspective, is that you have quite some agronomic gains from doing these type of changes in crop rotations that are dominated by annual crops. So you have less problems with weed and pests, so you have less need for pesticides and chemical input in general. You also improve soil carbon and you improve the soil fertility. As a consequence of that, you have improved yields and also more stable yields. The tolerance for droughts is improved, and you can also have some biodiversity gains at field level, but also at landscape level. So in that sense, you for the farmer within the context of carrying on basically what has been done earlier, but with small shifts in this crop rotation, you can have a quite strong motivation. If we then also add the possibilities of biorefining the harvest that you get from these grass clover lay cultivations, you can see that you have then additional benefit that benefits the society as a whole. Soil carbon increase, of course, good for the farmer, also good for the society, because you take out CO2 from the atmosphere. You produce new products along with the other products. You can produce biochar, biomethane as an alternative to fossil gas. Really the strong motivation in the work that we have done so far with actors, that is to get a protein feed that you can use instead of soy meal. So you reduce the import dependency of soy, which is quite big in Europe. And you also have reduced need for synthetic fertilizers. So again, providing some general numbers at the European level. If you would go for this as an option in Europe, you could produce biomethane through these biorefineries at volumes corresponding roughly to the EU 2030 target in the Repower EU targets. If you combine the benefit of substituting fossil gas with the soil carbon storage, and then up to the level where you have a new equilibrium, stable soil carbon. So the combined benefit of that, you would have savings corresponding roughly half of the current agricultural emissions in EU. I mean, these are ballpark numbers, but just to give you the sense of the potential here. One effect is, of course, that we displace annual crops. So in that sense, you have a displacement effect of introducing these grass cultivations in the crop rotation. That is compensated by higher yields, and also that we have a less need of cultivating soy, of course. So depending on where the soy cultivation would have taken place and the yields that you see in these areas, our calculations at least indicate that you actually might end up with the land savings rather than a displacement effect with indirect land use change elsewhere. So if you started out from a motivation of reducing environmental impacts in EU agriculture, you would recognize when you dive deeper here that you can also have other benefits that really benefit the society as a whole. So you can improve food and energy security, definitely. And you also find a quite strong contribution to climate change mitigation and adaptation. We looked a bit also on kind of the question, what would make farmers go for this, and what are possible drivers that might convince them to try this. And among the drivers that we see, I listed them here. You have the EU Water Directive, where you can maybe have an easier time requiring compliance with this directive if farmers can see that they would actually not need to totally end their crop cultivation in places where you have really severe eutrophication of water bodies, but you could go for perennials and then reduce leakage and still make an income from cultivating the land. You have possible new income streams from carbon farming, soil restoration incentives. You would reduce the gas import dependency, which is really important today. Also wanted to point out this protein import dependency. So today we are extremely dependent on imports for soy, for instance, where 84% of soy is imported to EU. And this is also the reason that EU currently have worked on a new protein strategy, which is really trying to reduce this import dependency. So yeah, that was a quick one, Pete, but we have At least I think it was quick. Now we have time for talking instead.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Göran. That really stuck to time, and that really sets us up nicely for the discussion. So and we're joined on the panel by Floor. So I'm going to mostly direct the questions to Floor, but Mohamed and Göran, please come in as you feel appropriate. So just to kick things off then, Floor, what do you think are the key sustainability challenges for bioenergy crops like Miscanthus and Willow under future climate change?
Thanks, Pete, and thanks also for having me today on this panel. And also thanks to both of the speakers. I really enjoyed your presentations and also the underlying studies. Coming back to your question about the key sustainability issues concerning Miscanthus and Willow, or maybe bioenergy crops in general, I think it all boils down to location. So what are we doing? How are we doing that? So what crop are we cultivating? How are we doing that? What management is applied? But most importantly, where are we doing that? And I think both studies indicated that it really depends where you do your bioenergy crop, what kind of environmental implications that would have. So very much depending on the biophysical and also the socioeconomic conditions of that location. So what could work in one location could turn out very badly in another location. So I think that's something really to keep in mind. There's no one size fits all here.
Okay, thank you very much, Floor. And by the way, to other participants on the webinar, if you have any questions that you'd like me to pose, please put them in the Q&A. I've tried to answer some of the questions of clarification during the talks because the speakers were busy. But if you have any other questions that you'd like me to put to the panel, please do that, and I'll do that. So the next question is about the impact of climate change. So Mohamed, you showed some results looking at climate change under different climate change scenarios. But as I understand it, this mainly looks at the increase in temperature and precipitation. But this is maybe for you first, Mohamed, and then for Floor to come in, and Göran, if you want. How do you think extreme events, climate extremes, drought, floods, wildfires, would change the picture? And does it make bioenergy crops more vulnerable in the future? And if so, are they any more vulnerable than, say, arable crops or forests?
I think Miscanthus and Willow are inefficient. If water efficient, they are not water. They don't need extra water. Comparing to the conventional crops, they need very small amount of water. But still, they can't stand, this kind of prolonged, drought. So if if the climate change come with a prolonged drought, then it will be a problem, for these crops. Also, growing these crops as monoculture might also be a problem, because it will lead to nutrient depletion, and may also lead to erosion, which is one of the problems in the future. And also, the climate change could come with pests and diseases which are not known. So maybe we'll also get this kind of problem in the future. This is what I can say.
Göran?
No, I really agree with what Mohamed said. What could be added maybe is that, we don't know how climate change will provide challenges for us in the future. But what we could see here is at least that when you have a larger portfolio of options, so that you have diversification of possibilities and possibly can make an income from doing things in new ways, if you have other markets for the biomass and new conversion systems, at least there should be better possibilities to adapt in that way. So I think that is maybe one key consideration, that, and it goes back to also what Floor said, it depends on what you do and where, and if you can do things in more ways, it should be helpful for our adaptation to climate change.
Okay, great. So it may actually improve resilience to future climate change. Floor, do you have anything to add?
No, so I totally agree with what Göran just mentioned. I think it indeed a broader portfolio adds to the resilience. And I think both Miscanthus and Willow are a bit more sturdy and a bit more adaptable to climate change. on the flip side of that is that also the initial investment for these crops are quite high. So if you have a lot of damage, then the damage can be big for those crops compared to animal crops.
Excellent, thank you. So the next question is, I've heard people worried about large-scale bioenergy. Göran has told us that it could be a way to diversify agriculture, and we could actually comes with a bunch of co-benefits. But what are the? I'll direct this to you, Floor. What are the implications for water and for soils of such a large scale up of bioenergy crops like Miscanthus and Willow?
Yeah, here I'd like to echo again also what Göran has been saying, also what you're now pointing out, that the discussion has become very black and white. So people are really like saying that the bioenergy will save the world, and where the other people saying that it is the root of all evil. And I think it would be great if we could find more the shades of gray and see where bioenergy can be beneficial, where we should do it, and also where we shouldn't do it, right? And I think also in the light of climate change, what also mentioned today, also pose a risk that maybe ultimately less land is available or suitable for agricultural production. So the competition for land even increases over time. So there's already quite some pressure now. Demand will increase, but the ability of land to provide those functions maybe decreases. So there will be competition. So I think that is something to keep in mind. So we should be careful with very large scale, I would say. But also what Göran pointed out, that there's a lot of opportunities to improve current conditions, especially when it comes to degraded lands or areas where you don't want to have intensified annual cropping. I think these are the areas that we should use for these kind of energy crop systems.
Thank you, Floor. Göran, you have your hand up. Is that a legacy hand, or would you like to compliment?
It is a legacy hand, but I always take the opportunity when you give me the word, Pete. So no, I think I mean one you talked about challenges and possible problems here, and I think this risk of investing largely into a new system that is kind of bringing you to a situation where you of course hesitate to go back. And I mean, in that sense, for instance, if you invest in forest-based systems where you have long rotations and so on, and you really wait to get the economic benefits from what you started, that might make you less flexible to changes in demand for food, for instance. And in that sense, I think we have seen that also with farmers, that they, at least in my experience, they are often more positive towards trying new things where they already have the machinery, where the new cropping systems are similar to what they are used to. So for instance, grass-based systems, at least where I am, has been easier to kind of get acceptance for compared to fast-growing trees as willow. I mean, we had big plans for willow back in the 90s, and it didn't really start off, partly because of the risk of investing strongly and being stuck with the system for 20 years. And then I think, I mean, if we see climate modeling studies showing risks of really big crop failures in big producing regions, so that you would have really higher food prices, then I think it's important for farmers to maintain this flexibility of going back to food and feed crops if there is a need for it.
Great, thank you. So let's take a few questions that have come in on the Q&A. So I'll put this one to you first, Floor. We had a lot of discussions about utilising marginal lands for various climate-related use, e.g. solar PV, etc., including growing biomass, such as presented in this session. I was wondering how much these options compete with other land uses in utilising the marginal lands. And this is a question from Yoga Pratama. So thank you for that question. Floor?
Yeah, I think indeed we should be careful what we call marginal land, right? Is it because there's nothing grows there, then including also biomass for energy, it won't grow there if the conditions are really bad? Or is it just marginal because it's remote? Or for what kind of reasons it's marginal? And we shouldn't try and should avoid to overestimate the potential from marginal lands. And indeed not allocated to many different purposes. I do think we could use it also to improve the conditions of that land, also to later on also be more suitable for agricultural production, for example. So use it temporary for energy production, for example, trying to improve those conditions. I think that would be the best way of using it. But indeed, if the conditions are marginal, your yield will also not be super high. So we should avoid trying to overestimate those potentials.
Great, thank you, Floor. We have another question here from Lisa Matthews, which I think I can answer quickly, so I'll do that. She says, maybe this was already covered in the presentation. Is there any risk of Miscanthus spreading as an invasive species in any of the modelled land areas, or is this a non-fertile hybrid? So I can answer that one. I think we're assuming that it's a non-fertile hybrid, as most of the ones that are used in Europe currently are. So it doesn't propagate from seed, so it doesn't spread as an invasive. And the next question comes from Andrea Cavina, and it says, thank you all. This is a question to Göran. In the case of grass crops are harvested to produce biomethane, is there still an increase in soil carbon? And if so, what is roughly the percentage of grass carbon being sequestered in the soil?
I cannot give you numbers that distinctly, but I mean, when you shift to introducing more of grass crops in a place where you historically have had quite much of annual cropping systems, where you consequently have experienced some reduction in the soil carbon, you also get an increasing soil carbon when you introduce these grass species again. So in that sense, the answer very much depends on the land use history. I can see that the world champion in soil carbon, Pete Smith, is nodding now, so that is reassuring. But I would say also that it's important. I mean, I talked about soil carbon increase, providing some indicative size of the improvement here. That was related to the soil organic carbon. So I did not then address, for instance, biochar and the incorporation of biochar into the soils, where you have a much longer, robust storage of the carbon. Because that is something that is important to keep in mind with introducing perennials in the way I described, that you have an increasing soil carbon for a while, but you reach a new stable level. So it is not something that just accumulates over time endlessly. And it's also important to remember that if you go back to focusing on annual crops again, you then lose the soil carbon back to the atmosphere. So it is, you can improve and then you can keep an improved level, but it requires that you then continue with the land use.
Great, thank you very much. So the next question, I'll put it to Floor in the first instance. I'm very interested in the combined nature biodiversity crisis that we have and the climate change crisis, and the increasing recognition that we need to tackle these things together. So what do bioenergy crops like Miscanthus and Willow, what do they do for biodiversity? Is there a positive effect on biodiversity, negative, or does it again depend on where and how you do it?
I'm afraid I have to answer, it depends. And not only on what and where, but then also it becomes about which taxonomic group are we talking about, right? Which is beneficial for birds can be detrimental for mammals, for example. So, and if you look at more endangered species or the number of species, so there's so many different indicators for what we call biodiversity. It's very difficult to pinpoint one answer. Having said that, I think diversifying the portfolio is always a good thing. Moving away from very high intensive agricultural land also helps. But there is also a discussion of land sharing versus land sparing, of course. So it's a very difficult. There's no just one answer to that. So, but I do think, indeed, coming back to your introduction of this question, that we should look at land more in an integral way. That we need land for many sustainable development goals, right? It's for climate, it's for biodiversity, it's for food, it's for equality, it's for so many things. And if we try to solve that one by one, we will definitely not find a proper solution. So I think having this integral look for climate, for biodiversity, food, all those things at the same time, because there will not be sufficient land if we do it one by one, right? So we have this integrated multifunctional land, we need that.
Yeah, great answer. And I suppose it also depends upon what you're replacing with the bioenergy crop, right? If you're chopping down an old forest, that's going to be worse for biodiversity and replacing it with an energy crop than replacing a monoculture arable crop, I suppose.
Yes, and if you look at the direct effect, it's very easy to beat monoculture annual land, right? Then everyone will be a winner compared to that. But then we should also take into account what would be the indirect effect of that, right? So if we replace food crops with lignocellulosic energy crops, and there's still demand for food, then it will go elsewhere. And we don't have little control where it will go, right? And it could go to marginal lands, but it could also go to very native forest or an other native vegetation where other detrimental effects will occur. So of course, the direct effects look very bright, but then we have to look at the entire system, and the indirect effects maybe look differently.
Yeah, it's a great point. So the conventional wisdom is that these energy crops, if they displace food crops, can have these knock-on effects. But I'll put this across to Göran now. You suggested that some of those indirect effects could actually be net beneficial in your talk, right? Could you expand on that, Göran, please?
Yes, I was actually about to ask Mohamed a question, but maybe I can do that afterwards. No, I mean, this was a very specific case that I talked about now, so one should definitely not generalize to be valid for other examples. But what we saw here was that when they introduced these grass crops into the rotations in this way, we had the benefits of improving the productivity of the systems as a whole, so that you perform better over time in the landscape, you can say, in terms of yield levels and so on. But then the critical thing here was this possibility with new biorefinery technologies to really produce a feed product, protein feed product that was of so high quality that you could then displace imported soy protein. And that was really the big gain. I mean, we talked about biodiversity gains. I didn't mention that, but of course, if we find ways to reduce the import dependency, we also reduce the deforestation pressure in the soy producing regions. And we know that we have soy expansion as one of the important factors behind tropical deforestation. So in that sense, you can also have a biodiversity benefit. But as I said, I mean, we shouldn't portray an overly positive picture with just examples and then generalizing them to be valid in all cases. This was just one example where we actually have a negative displacement, you can say. We save land.
And do you want to ask Mohamed your question, Göran?
Yes, if I may, Mohamed, I mean, I was really curious about your results and also, I mean, on the maps. You model now for one future climate scenario, but I guess you have modeled for, or you showed for one, but have you modeled for many different climate outcomes? How did you decide what to investigate?
No, the decision, came with we decided to use a low emission scenario and high emission scenario. This is why we use A1, F1, and B1. So the B1 is just sustainability scenario, and the A1, F1, which is high emission scenario, to just see these kind of variations.
Yeah. So if someone calls you up and wants to have more elaboration for a certain region and so on, is it easy for you to do that now? It's just about inserting new input data and you get...
we can do that, yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay.
We have all other scenarios, incorporated in the model, so we can just run them. That would be possible, yes.
And do you plan to extend in terms of cropping systems, like maybe eucalyptus or other?
We can do that. We don't have a plan, but we can do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you. We've got 4 minutes left, so I'd like to move to the last question, which integrates the question.
Can I add Sorry, before you move, can I add, the reducing of the pesticide, also, and reduction of the fertilizer for the bioenergy crops, maybe also, will help in the biodiversity, just that.
Okay, great. We'll move to the last question now, which I think is a very important one. And it also relates to Philip Johnson's question, which he's just asked about. I'll ask the question first and then supplement it with a broader question. Any ideas of EU policies which will promote or hinder the expansion of these crops? I'm thinking of indirect effect of the Fit for 55 package, as well as the RED 111, RED 3 directive. So that's one question. And to broaden out a little, what policies or incentives are needed to encourage the beneficial land use changes? We talked about how, we can minimize the adverse impacts and maybe produce some co-benefits from bioenergy. What sort of incentives and policies do we need in Europe to do that? And what about these ones that Philip asked? Are there some already in place that can have an impact? I'll put that to Floor first.
Yeah, so I think here again, also for the policy suppliers, that we think a bit too much in silos, right? We want to stimulate one, but not thinking about the consequences of that or the other effects. So having a bit more holistic view on land use in general would, I think, really help, instead of having all those different types of policies in place. And also to value really the contribution to ecosystem services, having a real value to that, I think that would really help the system.
Great, thank you. Göran, do you want to add to that?
Yes, possibly. I mean, a direct answer to Philip's questions about things that might discourage the use of cultivated systems, that would be simply that you have in the EU ruling the possibilities to simply define what is allowed to use as a feedstock for producing specific products, and then often that relates to producing biofuels or bioheat to bioelectricity. So you have this kind of steering towards using only waste and residues, and of course that is not them promoting dedicated production systems. Adding to Floor, I think in general to establishing policies to move us towards kind of resilient systems that would maybe in the longer term not even need the policies. It rests on simply promoting things that farmers find useful for their enterprise in general and for the land use and maintaining the quality of soils and so on. So you shouldn't create a kind of a temporary policy supported environment that doesn't make sense really from the point of view of agronomics and so on. It's the same with soil carbon, that it should be promoted because it makes life better for farmers in producing crops in general.
Perfect, thank you. And Mohamed, if this was so great, farmers would be doing this already, but we know there's not much bioenergy that's grown in Europe. So do the farmers need additional support, economic or policy support, to adopt these energy crops?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think the farmer need to be informed, about the importance of the bioenergy crops, and also, I think the project which will be done should also consider the rights of the farmer to have to avoid this conflict with the community, with the local community. So I think that will be important. Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Right, thank you very much. Look, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you, Floor and Göran and Mohamed, for giving the presentations. It's been excellent. And I'll hand it back over to Sahel to say goodbye.
Thank you very much, Pete, and all the guests. It was a great webinar. I hope everybody enjoyed. Yes, and stay tuned, as I mentioned, next month, second Wednesday of the month at 2 p.m., same time, same place. We hope to see you. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Bye.